Okay, well, good morning everybody. Thank you for inviting me to this event, to the final conference of grades. When I was invited to give some comments on the project, I was a bit concerned actually because I do not know the project very well. To my background, I'm a political scientist. And so I thought even if I really would dig deep into the deliverables and the project results, well, honestly, I probably would not understand too much. I do work in a kind of an interdisciplinary context at the Fraunhofer Institute for Systems and Innovation Research. So my colleagues have a biology background, they're biotechnologists, nanotechnologists, we have a lot of engineers, but also social scientists and people with an economics background. So I do have a, well, very basic understanding of what is being discussed here, but of course I will not be able to really grasp and understand the actual scientific core of the project. But nonetheless, I was quite positive about the opportunity to talk about the project and kind of reflect about its relationship to this relatively new concept of responsible research and innovation. However, what is, I think, quite important for me, I'm not intending to evaluate or even critically assess grades from an RRI perspective. First of all, the concept RRI is fairly new, so we don't have any indicators which would enable us to perform such an evaluation. And secondly, it does not, I think it runs counter to my understanding of responsible research and innovation, because I think RRI is nothing we should impose upon scientists and researchers. On the contrary, instead of a top-down process, RRI, at least in my understanding, is to a large extent something that should come from bottom-up, which should be embraced by scientists and researchers if they see the value and the advantages of making their research processes and the outcomes of research more relevant to society and putting their results more in line with the needs and expectations and values of society. Just some background. I've been involved in the issue of responsible research innovation since about 4 years now. I'm coordinating a project called Resagora. So many of the things I'll be talking about in this presentation are actually inspired by the work we're doing in Resagora. Joachim was participating in one of our workshops and some other participants here in the conference as well. So some of you might have an idea what we're trying to do in the project. And apart from that, I'm also involved in a large-scale monitoring activity. This monitoring activity of responsible research and innovation tries to learn more about the impacts and the benefits of RRI being performed throughout Europe. And I'm also involved in a project on behalf of the Office of Technology Assessment at the German Bundestag. We're conducting a study on potentials of RRI in the German research and innovation landscape. So before I'll focus on the project itself, on GRACE. I thought it might be good to start with a brief introduction of what RRI could be and what it tries to change. I don't know how many of you ever heard of the concept of RRI. I assume it's not everybody, so I'll just try to give a short overview of what RRI is about. In general, it tries to be a more comprehensive approach to the interface of science and society. And in essence, it is trying to address questions which direction research and innovation should take. So it raises and opens up the question, what kind of future do we want and what is the contribution of science and innovation to this type of future? So it goes beyond of dealing with risk assessment questions and the management of risks, but really opens up to questions of directionality. Where should innovation go? And in order to do this, procedural issues play a strong role in RRI. So the involvement of stakeholders, as we've seen here in GRACE, but also the encouragement of actors' responsiveness towards developing more forward-looking, anticipatory take at science and innovation. So the people working in the field of RRI are trying to develop mechanisms, tools, which facilitate this type of attitude. Even though the concept itself is still floating, there's no solid definition available at the moment. The debate is still really going on at the moment. I think it is fair to say that, in essence, RRI is about trying to improve the alignment of impacts of technology and innovation with societal demands and values. So that is taking ethical considerations seriously, reflexivity and participation throughout the whole innovation cycle. There are a lot of definitions out there what RRI could be. That's still being debated. I just selected a couple of them here, and maybe just to get an idea of what RRI could be. Maybe you want to take this one from Jack Stilgo and colleagues. Responsible research and innovation means taking collective care of the future through stewardship of innovation in the present. So this is just one of the definitions that are being debated at the moment. And in order to realize responsible research and innovation, I think there are 4 main areas which need to be addressed. First of all, it's about identifying normative principles which are based on a broad societal consensus in order to give guidance to achieve the right impacts of research and innovation. It is essential to include citizens as co-innovators both in the research process, where that is possible, but also in the relevant decision-making arenas. It's about the systematic integration of comprehensive impact assessments, technology assessment, risk assessments, foresight, and the whole range of strategic intelligence, if you will, in order to inform decision-making around issues of research and innovation. And it's about the development of governance arrangements which contribute to the objectives of RRI and which intend to facilitate more responsiveness. So this is not just, RRI is not just something of a few crazy social scientists thinking about how research and innovation should change. It's actually becoming a central feature of research and innovation in Europe, particularly at the level of the European Commission. We have a dedicated unit in DG Research promoting RRI, the SWAFS unit. SWAFS is basically the successor of the Science in Society group within DG Research. It's called Science with and for Society. RRI has become a cross-cutting issue in Horizon 2020. So if you're looking at the newly published work programs coming out of Horizon 2020, RRI is popping up more and more frequently in a number of calls. Last year we had the so-called Rome Declaration on RRI that was run under the auspices of the Italian Council Presidency, where there was a strong endorsement to establish RRI as a guiding principle for research funding in Europe. We see at the member state level numerous RRI activities in the UK, the Netherlands, Denmark, but also in Norway, and probably more and more countries that are focusing on RRI, for instance, at the level of research councils. And industry is taking up RRI as well. It's not about replacing concept of corporate social responsibility, but those industries, companies, corporations that are strong in research and development are also focusing on RRI. They have the European Industrial Research Management Association, for instance, has established a task force on responsible innovation. So this is just to give you a first idea of what's going on in the scene with regard to RRI. So before turning to the project itself, to the GRACE project, some preliminary remarks. First of all, GRACE was not designed specifically to address RRI. Nonetheless, it's wonderful that we have the chance to talk about RRI and the project, and I think there is a lot to say about that. The comments I will make on the project are based on my understanding of RRI, of course inspired by the different research projects we are conducting on the issue. My intention is, as I said, not to assess or evaluate the project, but maybe to support reflection about the broader implications of GRACE and similar projects. And again, my knowledge about the GRACE project is limited, so if I say something completely wrong, that is just my own ignorance, and just let me know if what needs to be corrected. So when I started thinking about the project and how this could be put into the context of RRI, I thought the best way to deal with that is maybe to raise questions, because raising questions seems to be something which really, at least in my view, which really helps to start a process of reflection. So for instance, some of the questions that I came up with when thinking about the project. What role did societal considerations, values, and ethics play in the development of the research questions and the scientific approach of GRACE? What was the purpose of the stakeholder engagement? What role did stakeholder engagement processes play in the overall architecture of the project, and what was the relationship to the project's scientific core? To what extent was the project open for and prepared to take different directions in response to the input perhaps provided by stakeholders and other societal considerations? How were the stakeholders actually defined? What was the aim of the increased transparency and the data accessibility, which plays a strong role in GRACE? To what extent was the project willing and ready to acknowledge and take into account other types of knowledge and expertise, such as non-scientific knowledge, lay perspectives, things like that? And what was done to enhance the capabilities of the project team to participate in stakeholder engagement and be more responsive to societal perspectives? What effects did the engagement exercise actually have? Now looking back at the project results, what does the GRACE team, how does the GRACE team assess the stakeholder processes and the transparency efforts in the project? Who participated in the stakeholder engagement process, and particularly who didn't, and why did they not participate? How were the project's efforts to increase transparency assessed by the stakeholders? Did the engagement processes enhance transparency and other project elements contribute to the societal robustness of GRACE? Probably we could go on with a list of these questions. To many of the questions I don't have complete answers, and I think that might be something, if you're interested, for the ensuing discussion after this commentary. But I'll just give it a try. Some of the answers that came into my mind when I listened to the presentations yesterday and today, and reading the material that was available for me. So what role did the societal considerations play in the development of the research questions and approach? I think what we can really see is that there was significant resources devoted to engagement and transparent communication in the project design, and significant resources were made available for that. I think there was put some some specific considerations on the ethics for the feeding trial, but but for me it was unclear how broader societal considerations were actually integrated in the project. So that might be something we could talk about. I guess the answer was quite clear, already given to us yesterday. What the purpose of the whole stakeholder engagement process was to fine-tune research processes to enhance relevance from a broader societal perspective. So that is very much in line with actually the intentions of responsible research and innovation. What role did the stakeholder engagement processes play in the overall architecture of the project? I think looking at the tables with the feedback to the comments from the stakeholders, that was really impressive to see this effort by the project team to respond to these inputs and comments. And what I think is even more important, and that's also something which might be really something to think about for similar project, is that the stakeholder involvement was also linked to a very early phase in the project, to the actual research planning. We don't see that too often actually in many projects, so that I think that's quite exciting actually. To what extent was the project open for and prepared to take different directions in response to the input by the stakeholders and other societal considerations? Well, the previous answer was already clear. Many of the things were taken up for the research design and the evidence reviews, but I don't know how open such a project could be actually to really take a different direction based on stakeholder feedback. I mean, we do have the very technical constraints imposed upon us by the rules of FP7 and H2020. I mean, we can't change a project constantly. We have these contracts, the grant agreements. But apart from that, there's also the question, would such a project team actually be ready to really change the direction based on stakeholder considerations, and would that make sense? That's an open question to be debated, of course. How were the stakeholders defined? I think from my observation it was very open and no active exclusion. For me it was a bit unclear to find out how much efforts were actually invested to ensure a balanced mix of perspectives. I know from my own projects it's extremely time consuming to actually activate participants for workshops and all other kinds of participatory formats, and so it's not only alone to motivate people to come to the events, but also to make sure we find a good mix, a good balance of stakeholder perspectives. That's not easy. What was the aim of increased transparency and data accessibility? I don't know, this is also something I can just speculate actually. Is it about improved legitimacy? Is it a contribution to more informed, rational discourse in the field? Definitely interesting point to talk about. To what extent was the project willing and ready to acknowledge and take into account other types of knowledge and expertise? I guess the way the project was set up, this does not really apply to GRACE. There are other projects where this might make more sense, but I might be wrong. I don't know how you would think about that. What was done to enhance the capabilities of the project team to participate in stakeholder engagement and be more responsive to societal perspectives? I don't know if anything was done. I know in the project consortium you had experts involved who know very much about organizing stakeholder engagement. I'm raising this question also because I think I'm quite convinced that it might be important for scientists to also develop capabilities to be involved in these types of stakeholder engagement. It's not something you can just do. There's a lot to learn about these processes. You can improve a lot about that. What effects did the engagement exercise actually have? We've seen excellent, transparent way how the comments were dealt with and how they also affected the actual research process. However, other effects, which I think are even more important, also for the project team. What about learning processes? Did, for instance, the stakeholder engagement trigger something like increased mutual trust amongst the stakeholders? Or was that not achieved? That's also, I think, very important, because particularly in the GMO debate, I don't have to tell you about that, the issue of trust is actually the problem. The stakeholders do not trust each other, or not in a way which would be really helpful to move on with the debate. How does the GRACE team assess the stakeholder process and the transparency efforts? Haven't heard much of that actually, how the project consortium itself views the whole process. You know, did it make sense, worthwhile? I mean, it was a lot of work. Did you get things out of it which you thought, well, yeah, we learned something, new perspectives or whatever? That would be interesting. And also on the side of the participants, the stakeholders, you know, do we know anything about the people who did not participate? Was it the lack of resources? We talked about that yesterday already. Was it a trust issue? Was there assumption of a hidden agenda of the project? What was the point? Do we know anything about that? Would be interesting also for the development of future projects. How were the project's efforts to increase transparency assessed by the stakeholders? I think there's a report coming up to actually address this, if I'm correct, kind of an evaluation of the stakeholder responses. Yeah, and did the engagement process, the enhanced transparency and other project elements contribute to the societal robustness of GRACE? I don't know, another open question to me, but I think also worthwhile to talk about it. So coming to an end and summarizing some of the things that kind of popped into my mind when looking at the project, I think there were really remarkable efforts to take stakeholder engagement and transparency seriously. There was a high degree of responsiveness within the project. And again, I'd like to emphasize the integration of engagement processes at a very early stage of the project, the research planning. Really important, and doesn't happen too often actually in most projects, where we see engagement processes more or less at the end of the pipeline, where actually the decisions have been made and the direction is set, and the stakeholders cannot really make a difference anymore for the project. I think we see some indications of learning processes in the consortium. I also would assume, but correct me if I'm wrong, there has been indications of building mutual trust, and I think there was a constructive exchange and deliberation going on throughout the project. Now, maybe looking ahead a little bit, and also to future projects, I think what we do have to invest some thought into developing new or different approaches to ensure how in order to ensure a balanced and more sustained stakeholder engagement. This is something many projects are struggling with. It's easily said to say, well, let's have a stakeholder process or a stakeholder engagement. But getting the people actually to join a workshop or the process is quite complicated actually. I also think it is important to invest some thoughts into capacities and capabilities building to be better able to integrate societal perspectives in research projects. And I think, and this also came up in the debates, it would be really important to open up upstream the actual agenda setting process for research projects. So this is nothing a project itself can do. That is definitely something that is more on the side of the research councils, of the funders, of the European Commission, to think about mechanisms in order to ensure that research agendas are including broader perspectives. Okay. Thank you very much.